Coming up on the Cynical Centrist Podcast, what the hell is Joe 30330? More post-debate Bubble Watch updates. John Delaney wants to draft you for national service. And Marianne Williamson shared an article from the Church of Scientology? Okay. This and more on this edition of the Cynical Centrist Podcast. Cue the new opening. So you're probably wondering what's going to make me laugh out of Alabama. Well, pretty much everything. But us? No, we don't have to follow those rules. We're the good guys. Could be worse than being a human Cheeto. You could be a clown that does porn. And whenever they say the word realistic, take a drink, you would probably be dead by the end of the night.
If he's not pissing you off, he's not doing his job. This is the Cynical Centrist Podcast.
Welcome to the Cynical Centrist Podcast for August 3rd, 2019, episode number 11. I am the Cynical Centrist. Hope you like the new upgrade. Yeah, that's the new voiceover there. But I will tell you what is not a great upgrade, and that is Joe Biden in a debate. What the hell was he trying to promote last night regarding his website? Like, others were promoting their own websites, and he was saying, go to Joe 30330 and something like that. And I was just like, does he mean the website Joe 30330? Or I think he lost his train of thought there. He should have said text Joe to 30330. But a lot of people were making fun of it. And if you go to joe30330.com, you will see it redirects to a website called joshforamerica.com. And I guess Josh is a Gen Zer, and he is running for president. Obviously, he can't run for president. He is not 35 years old. I think the oldest Gen Zer right now is like 22. But it's actually a pretty cute little website, and I find it funny. Like I said, Joe, you can tell that he just trails off. And when he trails off and forgets things, that's where I'm a little bit worried about him. Let me ask you all something. Do you want a guy who keeps forgetting things to be president of the United States for 4 years, especially when he's going to be in his 80s while he is in office? I'm a little worried about Joe Biden, man. I am a little bit worried. I mean, a lot of people are talking about how Donald Trump is probably suffering from some kind of mental issue from being too old. But you realize Donald Trump is only 73. Joe Biden is like 4 years older. And you're going to put him in the White House? Are you serious? And yeah, I've talked about this before. And I know Bernie is even older. He's the one serious candidate, I should say, that is even older than Joe Biden by about a year. But at least Bernie Sanders seems to be on key and on point. He doesn't seem to be forgetting things the way that Joe Biden is. Joe Biden seems to have all the excitement of a sleeping puppy. And part of that, I think, is because of age. And it kind of scares me a little bit. I actually would trust Bernie Sanders to do better in the White House than Joe Biden, although I would still be very worried about Bernie Sanders, just because he would be 79 upon inauguration. And this is kind of where I have issues with a lot of the moderate Democrats, just because they don't really stand out. And last night, Bill Maher was talking about how we need to look less crazy than Trump in order to win the White House. Bill Maher pointed, for example, to Joe Biden, who currently is the only Democratic candidate that would win the state of Ohio. Of course, of the 24 candidates, they are only polling how 5 or 6 candidates are going to do against Donald Trump and not all 24. And I do understand that some candidates still need to get their name out there. So obviously, a lot of the more minor candidates will probably lose to Donald Trump as of right now. But you also have to look at their positions and see how people respond to those positions over time. And I feel like Joe Biden is one of those types of candidates who is very similar to Hillary Clinton, maybe a little better than Hillary Clinton. He'll start strong, but if he keeps flubbing up the way that he has in the primaries, he could be in serious trouble down the road against Donald Trump in a general election. And then you have a lot of the younger Democratic candidates like John Delaney, John Hickenlooper. They don't really promise that much, and I have two observations about this. First, historically, when it comes to compromising, the Republicans have gotten a lot more their way than Democrats. And with the Democrats, whenever they bring in a moderate candidate to the table, and the Republicans bring in a far-right candidate, what we end up getting is a center-right to far-right deal that helps out Republicans. On top of that, a lot of the centrist and conservative Democrats tend to fall for the trap that if they just move a little bit to the left of the Republicans, they're going to be labeled as socialists. And they're afraid that socialism is such a dirty word to the American public, and they never try to defend those said, quote-unquote, socialist policies. And so the Republicans tend to get more of their way because they know how to talk, and the Democrats just shy away. At least the conservative, centrist Democrats, I should say. So I can see where the progressives have come up with this idea that if you bring in a far-left candidate and it comes down to compromising, then you will get an idea that is a little bit more their way. So they probably think that if they go more extreme than the right wings, and trust me, it's really hard to go further to the left than Donald Trump is to the right, but they're going to give it a try. I mean, free college, complete student debt forgiveness for Bernie Sanders, and so on. When it comes down to the compromising table, they are going to make an attempt to push things towards their way. And I understand that strategy, and it is a very good political strategy. Even if it sounds like a cure for a concussion is a second bigger concussion to knock out the first. But on the surface, it might look like it's the perfect strategy to get ideas that most of the people really want, like universal healthcare coverage. So yeah, on the surface, I can understand why you will see the hashtag no middle ground. However, they want to be careful not to go too far left. And this is where I think I want to challenge a lot of the more moderate Democrats. If a moderate or a conservative blue dog Democrat decided to change their position on just three things. One, support Medicare for all. Two, end the forever wars that we are having in the Middle East. And three, increase the minimum wage to $9, $10 an hour, but most importantly, tie the minimum wage to inflation. Tie it to an inflation index. If they do those three things, they don't have to do anything else. They just have to do those three things, change those three issues, and they can be moderate, conservative in everything else. They will be the best candidate to beat Donald Trump. Well, I should also add that they need to avoid identity politics, but most of the centrist conservative candidates do, in fact, avoid identity politics, so that does not need to really be said. But yes, any centrist candidate that just changes their position on those three things, they don't have to do anything else. Even someone as brazen and dopey as John Delaney, Derp himself, could easily defeat Trump. Easily. Because that is what the people want. You have 70 to 80% who want health care. A lot of the other progressive policies, people are kind of either split or the majority they are against for the most part. Even UBI, Andrew Yang's idea, the people are split on it. Which, by the way, it's like one of the first election cycles, so that the people are split is actually a really, really good thing, rather than being vehemently against it. But that should show you just how important it is for a candidate to really push for a government-run universal health care, or at least a heavily government-subsidized universal health care system. And that is what the centrist Democrats do not understand. Also, the minimum wage needs to go up, and people are sick of putting all of our money into wars. They want defense to actually mean defense. So they probably want money out of defense, maybe not really like out of defense, just get the bloating out, and to stop going and being the world's police and let's just focus on ourselves. It's that simple. I mean, Donald Trump ran on that, the last part anyway. Now, the annoying orange has continued to keep the tradition of being the world's police, but that's what I'm trying to say. People actually respond to those three things. And if a centrist or conservative Democratic candidate wants to win, they need to change to fit the people's needs. Unfortunately, they are all pretty much bought out, and I don't see any of them happening. So that's the reason why you have a lot of people turning to these progressive candidates. Even though they might be wanting some ideas and they think that the people want other ideas, no, they actually just want those three things. They don't really care too much for free college. They know free college or complete student loan forgiveness is not really that feasible without causing massive taxes. And they know that increasing taxes on the wealthy to the levels that are needed to pay for all these things is just not going to happen, because they don't have enough money to begin with for us to pay for everything. And two, at least in the short term, you will see a lot of them move to other tax-friendly areas. And actually, now that I think about it, as I'm talking, there's actually a fourth position that they should probably stand on, but I consider this more of a progressive and libertarian idea than anything else. It's kind of a combination of the two. So that's probably why I didn't count this, but ending corruption in Washington. And I say that it's also a libertarian idea because, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has been working with Ted Cruz. That's right, one of the most conservative candidates in Congress, Senate, just in Washington, D.C. right now, over a bill that is going to ban any former Congress members from being lobbyists, a lifetime ban. So that's not really a progressive idea. That is more of a progressive / libertarian / populist idea than anything else. So that's just my 2 cents on the situation. Really, the best candidate for us to beat Donald Trump is, in fact, a candidate who is Bill Maher's right, a little bit more centrist, a little bit more conservative than your Bernie Sanders, or maybe even Elizabeth Warren, but who will be a progressive when the people need him to be a progressive. And right now, that is in cases like government-run healthcare, because people see all these people dying, and they don't want to be next to die for something that could have easily been prevented had they been able to go see a doctor. They want higher minimum wages. $15 an hour is a bit much in places like Alabama and whatnot. So set up a tiered system that starts off at $9, $10 an hour and maybe increases in the bigger cities in like San Francisco, Seattle. But most importantly, tie it to the inflation index. And of course, stopping the forever wars and ending corruption in Washington. Just do those things, and that will be it. And especially don't say that healthcare or universal healthcare is bad policy and bad politics, John Delaney. Now, I did see John Delaney's 2 new policies, and I want to go through them both. He's promoting 2 new policies over the last week. And since I have spent the better part of the last month or two making fun of John Delaney mostly, I mean, he did like one of my tweets, I thought I would talk about his issues. Just 2 of them today, although I think that's pretty much all he's got. No, he's actually got a good 30 of them on his website. But I'm just going to talk about the 2 that he's been promoting. The first one earlier in the week was mandatory national service. What? From johndelaney.com, every American will complete a minimum of 1 year and a maximum of 2 years of mandatory national service when they graduate high school or turn 18. This will apply to individuals born after 2006, but will phase in over time. To meet the national service requirement, participants can choose one of 4 options. They can serve in our nation's military, serve in a new expanded community service program, serve in a new national infrastructure apprenticeship program, or serve in a newly created climate corps. And in return, he is willing to offer you 1 year of service will result in 2 years of free in-state tuition and fees at a public university, community college, or technical school, 2 years of service will result in 3 years of free in-state tuition and fees at a public university. How unbelievably unaware is this guy? I just can't believe it. Like, this is where I officially gave him the nickname Derp, because for crying out loud, John Delaney, I get it. Other countries do have a mandatory national service. Finland, Israel, South Korea. But you know what else they got? They got a government that takes care of its citizens. Free healthcare, free college, or affordable college at the very least. And they don't have a government that's built so much on corruption and with such a bloated defense budget that you're just not going to get people really passionate into national service. And if you think that this is going to create a nationwide sense of service and patriotism as one of your benefits, you're going to be sadly mistaken. All right, you know what? I used to think Biden might have been the least electable candidate just because of how forgettable and old that he is. But you know what? No. After this, I think John Delaney probably is the least electable candidate against Donald Trump. Thank goodness he's polling at like 0.1% or something like that, because he's definitely not going to win with a platform like this. Like, yeah, you'll have some people agreeing with it, and like I said, I get it. Other foreign countries have it, but until he's willing to promise everything that Bernie's promising and more, he should just stop wasting people's time. Not even most conservative Republicans would back a mandatory national service, at least as of right now. And please don't give Donald Trump any ideas. That's the other problem, too. He might be giving Donald Trump and the Republicans some ideas. The second policy is what he calls better care. Oh, great marketing there. My God. This guy is so unaware of just how dopey he looks. And he thinks this is going to respond well to the American people? Seriously? Better care? Anyway, actually inside better care, if you think I'm going to make fun of it, you're going to be a little disappointed. It's actually all right. If you're into a public option, an ACA with a public option, that's basically what better care is. So, I mean, at least he's got that going for him, I guess. It's still not Medicare for all, but I mean, it is another step towards that direction. So if nothing else, I guess that's all right. I still would prefer to just go straight to Medicare for all, or some kind of plan that's similar to France and their heavily government subsidized system. But it is a step in the right direction, so I'll say, all right, it's not bad. I guess it's not bad. I do have one concern, though, and that is what constitutes basic care and what constitutes premium care. Does basic care cover things like cancer or chronic illnesses? I'll give you an example. I actually have a chronic illness. The drug that I use to treat my chronic illness requires authorization. It does require authorization from an insurance company in order for me to have the drug. It costs a shit ton of money uninsured, but yeah, it does need authorization in order to be covered by insurance. That can't possibly be counted as basic care, right? So if it's not, I'm going to have to go and buy some kind of supplemental premium insurance. How much is this premium insurance? I'm pretty sure that you're going to really hurt these insurance companies by making sure that you have a public option that has the ability to pay for basic care, which is what most people have. So clearly, the cost of this premium insurance, if not government subsidized, or heavily government subsidized, I should say, is going to go up. Would I be paying $1,000 a month? $2,000 a month? If so, we're better off just having Obamacare then, at least for people like me. So that's something that he wasn't very clear on. That what's basic care, what's premium care. Now, I would be for it if it actually but that's the thing. If it covers that, then what is premium care going to cover? Things like abortions or something? Or plastic surgeries? I mean, that's just cosmetic stuff. Well, I'm sorry, abortion's not cosmetic. I'm saying plastic surgery is cosmetic. But like, certain premium things, like if you count abortions as premium coverage, well, I don't know. The line's very blurry, is what I'm trying to say. And that's what it comes down to, is two things. What is basic and premium, and how much is the premium going to cost? The government needs to put some skin, well, most of its skin in the game, so that way it can help us negotiate lower drug prices like other countries have it. All right, so before I keep going, I want to give a special thanks to Audionautics.com for the opening song, Audionautics.com for thousands of different songs for your podcast or advertisement. I also want to thank Eric Gerstein, I hope I had pronounced that name correctly, for the professional voiceover. If you're looking for a professional voiceover, please go check him out on Fiverr. His username is Airwaveman, HeirWavman. So special thanks to him as well for the voiceover. And also, Pulsar Radio, spinning new alternative, indie rock, punk, metal, hardcore, and more, and talks about anime, wrestling, hockey, nerd culture, and more. Wednesdays, 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific, 9 to midnight Eastern, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific on Fridays, 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern. Tune in at radiovegas.rocks. Download the free radiovegas.rocks app for iPhone and Android. All right, so 2 more people I want to talk about. Well, 3. One very briefly, I'm going to talk about Kamala Harris. Now, a lot of people have been talking about, is Kamala Harris finished? Can we knock her out of the top tier candidate base? And from what it looked like in the debates, she did not look very good last night. No. And man, Twitter was trending with Kamala destroyed. Hashtag Kamala destroyed. People talking about how she's a cop. And there were a couple others too. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard went to town on her records and what she had done in the state of California. And there were some of these things, one thing in particular where she kept people in prison just because California needed the, free or harshly reduced labor. Just drives me, that is crazy, but apparently it has not affected her in the polls all that much. The recent morning consult poll had her just dropping about 3 points, which she is the biggest drop. But that should show you that the CNN debates did not really affect things all too much. So do I think Kamala Harris is done? I don't think she's done just yet. I think she has a chance to recover come September, October. She already qualifies for the debates. She is still a pretty solid 4th place. But I will say that she is weakening a little bit. She definitely, it's a far cry from where she was with Joe Biden. And it kind of shows that a lot of these candidates are going to have skeletons in their closet, and they're just going to have to weather the storm, weather it out, and hopefully they will have another chance to shine. And I think that Kamala Harris does have that opportunity. I think she will get a second opportunity in the September or October debates. All right, that's enough about Kamala Harris. I'm going to move on to Andrew Yang, who a lot of people thought won night 2, and Marianne Williamson won night 1. Well, in my opinion, I'll agree on the first part. Andrew Yang did win night 2 just barely. I think Julian Castro was actually winning most of the night, but Andrew Yang did have the best opening, and he did have the best closing. Marianne Williamson winning night 1, I think Bernie Sanders probably won because he took the most command of the stage, and Elizabeth Warren was assisting, but I would say she's either number 2 or number 3. I put her down as number 2, but I know a lot of people that would put her down as 3rd, and I think 2nd or 3rd would be reasonable to put for Marianne Williamson. I'm going to start with Andrew Yang first, and then I'll make my way to the more controversial Marianne Williamson. I do think of all of the non-top tier candidates, these debates are probably going to help Andrew Yang the best. Andrew Yang is a relative unknown, and after last night, now a lot of people know about him, and he also gained a lot of Twitter followers. Now, he's already reached the maximum amount of donors, and he only needs 2% poll. I think it's a given at this point. He's going to September and October. It also probably helps that out of the 3 shining outsider candidates, that is Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, and Marianne Williamson, the mainstream media has been going on Andrew Yang the least by a considerable margin. Tulsi Gabbard, people talking about her meeting Assad in Syria, and also NBC coming out saying that Russia is trying to help Tulsi Gabbard win. That also does not help her out a bit at all, even though, it's not her fault. And Marianne Williamson, which we're going to talk about later on, being anti-vax and also posting an article regarding antidepressants from the Church of Scientology. But Andrew Yang is doing quite well for himself, I think. And I think that he has a chance. He is the outsider candidate with the best chance with upward momentum. Do I think he's going to win? As I had mentioned back on episode 5 of my podcast, I do not think that he has a chance to win still. But I think he actually has a chance to make it into the final 5 or 6 candidates. That's a possibility. And I do think that if he wins the primary, it might not be an easy run against Trump, but I think that he will have a solid chance to defeat Donald Trump. And I think he is the best candidate that the Democrats have, right now anyway, other than Joe Biden in the numbers, though I think that he will find a way to screw it up. He has the most potential, Andrew Yang, to beat Donald Trump. And much of that is because you cannot put this guy in a box. A lot of his ideas are probably the most progressive that are heard, and a lot of his ideas are the most conservative, at least out of the major candidates anyways, not John Delaney. And he also is able to sell progressive ideas to non-progressives and even to conservatives. That should be a candidate that you want nominated right now. And unfortunately, the Democrats, at least the DNC, don't want him to do that for some reason. I don't understand why. Other than, they don't want to lose money based off of his VAT tax idea. Yang, though, has made one error, and I hope he does not do this in September or he is done. He talks about UBI way too much. He sounds way too much like a one-trick pony, and it started to get a little bit annoying in the second debate. Now, granted, I know that he had the least speaking time, but he was not the least speaking time by all that much. I think John Hickenlooper in night 1 had like 6 seconds more speaking time than Yang did. So I think CNN was a lot more fair to him. And a lot of the reasons why he didn't get a lot of speaking time, or at least the least speaking time, is because he got into the least fights as well. And he does use that time pretty wisely, for the most part, until we got to climate change. And he's talking about how climate change, he uses UBI as an answer to climate change. It sounded like anyway. And that's where the UBI idea just started to get, I felt like, and to a lot of my peers, a little bit annoying. And I'm hoping September, October, he talks a little bit more like he did with the Iran question where he didn't mention UBI. Like, we get it. You want to give us $1,000 a month. And talk about more flagship ideas. Now, obviously, he won't be able to do this with foreign policy. But when it comes to domestic policy, I would like to see him talk about human-centered capitalism. His idea to change the metric from just GDP to a 5 or 10 metric system on how we are doing and how businesses should be subsidized and whatnot is an awesome idea. It gives capitalism the perfect kind of tune-up I think that it needs. And it would put us in the forefront of creating new ideas as to what capitalism should be focused on in helping people, and not just pretending to help people, where you have a class of people who have all the money, that's 1 or 2 or 3%, and then the rest of us who are just either barely scraping by or cannot even get enough money to seek shelter. And we would have people just with a massive poverty rate as we do right now. This guy has a treasure trove of ideas that nobody's ever heard of. And I'm hoping in these next 2 debates, he will actually show those so that people realize, oh, wow, this guy is not a one-trick pony. This guy actually knows his stuff, and he might actually have great ideas for the country. Maybe I should vote for him. Now, that's for Andrew Yang's case. Let's go on to Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson, the supposed winner of night 1. And she did a really good job this time. She sounded like a legitimately strong candidate, and I know I made fun of her in the scenario against Donald Trump, and that I thought she had no chance. But if she talked like that, I think she'd probably still lose. But I think that she would do a lot better against Donald Trump. she would definitely win back some of those states that I gave, like New Mexico, that are strongly Democrat, with that kind of delivery and those kind of issues and those kind of policies, with the exception of slave reparations. I think she did a really solid job. The problem, though, is in her past, and probably even now. Now, she has came out and said that she's pro-science, she's pro-vaccines, but a lot of her old work, some as recent as 2013, kind of show something entirely different. One tweet in particular that I saw on her interview with Anderson Cooper kind of scared me a little bit, and it's about antidepressants. Now, she had been, at the time at least, sounded like an opponent of antidepressants. And she retweeted or posted an article saying that antidepressants were the cause of Robin Williams' suicide. The suicide of comedian Robin Williams. And you know who wrote that article? The Church of Scientology. The Church of Scientology. Are you serious? Now, do I think that Marianne Williamson is a Scientologist? Of course not. At least I hope not anyway. She says that she's not a Scientologist, so I absolutely will take her on her word on that one. But that is a complete lack of oversight there on her part. You would think that she would delete tweets like that, or at least go back the last 5 to 10 years and realize, hey, maybe some of these tweets that the American people might not respond very well to. Because it is tweets like that that's going to turn off a lot of voters who think that vaccines work. And that's like 90% of the population who think that antidepressants work. Again, that's like 90%, maybe a little bit less than 90% of the population. And backpedaling is just not going to get you anywhere. Now look, I really want to like Marianne Williamson. I have an issue with her toxic positivity, but I feel like that she's a little bit more realistic than she lets on. And I felt like she had a lot of potential. But it's things like this that kind of scare me away from ever wanting to put her on my top 5. Even if she renounces it now. Just knowing that she did this in the past and knowing how her followers are like just kind of scares me a little bit. It really does. And it should be very concerning. Now, don't get me wrong. I want her to last another round. I want her to go to the September-October debates. But it's things like this that might keep her from doing that and could very well end her campaign in September. It's very similar to what I talked about with John Delaney. Just being unaware that, hey, maybe the independent voter, if I'm going to go into politics, the independent voter is probably not going to like this. Or in this case, just about everyone is not going to like this. And the really sad part is, a candidate like this, I still have to admit, despite the anti-vax stance, or possible anti-vax stance, and the unawareness of posting an article from the Church of Scientology, is still probably one of the best candidates that the Democrats have. That kind of goes to show you the quality of these candidates that we have right now. To me, that's still technically a little bit better than Joe Biden forgetting things. Because at least I know Marianne Williamson is going to be aware if she's president. Now, do I think that she's going to win? Well, after this, absolutely not. I think that even with celebrity endorsements at this point, she's probably done. And that's probably the reason why you're not seeing too many celebrity endorsements this time. And also, I think she ran for a California congressman position a while back. I heard like 2014. And she did have celebrity endorsements then, and she still only finished 4th place. Ted Lieu, I believe, won that race. Now, Marianne Williamson ran as an independent back then. If she ran as a Democrat, she might have been able to win that race. I'm not quite sure. But it's clear that celebrity endorsements are just not helping her. And they're probably not going to help her now, especially with all of this baggage that she has. So do I think that she's done? I mean, I hate to say it. And I know I have a lot of Marianne Williamson supporters listening to this, but I have to say it. Yeah, I think that this is definitely going to this might even end her campaign in September. I want to say that she'd be able to keep going. Maybe if she missed the September debates, with the extended deadlines for the polls, she could make the October debates, but she is going to need a small miracle at this point in order to make the September debate. And that is a good transition to go into our September Democratic debate bubble watch. For those new to the podcast, I have set up a discrete 6-point system for the bubble watch based on 2 criteria that the DNC has put out in order for candidates to make it to the September and October debates. The first one, 2 points, donors. Every 65,000 donors counts as 1 point up to 130,000, thus 2 points. And finally, the polls, 4 points, where each 2% they get in the poll counts as 4 points. 6 points gets them a lock, and they have to hit 6 points by August 28th, or they will miss the September debates. So far, 8 candidates have hit lock status. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke, and just this week, Cory Booker and Amy Klobuchar have both hit the 6-point mark. Amy Klobuchar just hitting it last night by getting her 130,000th donor. In 5 points, in the should-be-in category, we have Julian Castro and Andrew Yang. Tulsi Gabbard makes her way up to the 3-point mark, getting her 130,000th donor. She now needs 3 2% polls. Tom Steyer has 2 of the 4 2% polls, but hasn't really recorded donors yet, so he sits at 2 points. And then we have 5 candidates at 1 point: Kirsten Gillibrand, Mike Gravel, Marianne Williamson, John Hickenlooper, and Jay Inslee. And of these candidates, I have predicted definitely Julian Castro is going to get in, definitely Andrew Yang is getting in, and I'm going to say Tulsi Gabbard is probably going to get in. Just because of the amount of popularity that she has had and this boom that she has had in Twitter followers and searches, I think that she has a really, really good chance. Well, okay, not really, really good, but I'll say a good chance. About a coin flip, maybe a little better than a coin flip, of surviving to September. And I'm going to set it, and I will say too, I think Tom Steyer also has a chance as well. But he needs to get the donors out. So I'm predicting 11 or 12. You know what, if you had to tell me which one it is, I'm going to say, I'll make a bold prediction and say 11 candidates are going to get in. That is the 8 that are already in: Julian Castro, Andrew Yang, and Tulsi Gabbard. And that is the Bubble Watch update. So for the last segment of the show, I want to talk about 2 things. First off, I was not quite sure what Joe Biden was doing. Going back to the beginning of the show, he says, go to Joe 30330, and my first thought was, is he giving away his zip code? So I actually went on andrewyang.com, and I put down 30330, and found out it's in Atlanta, Georgia, and apparently Andrew Yang can give us $174,000 a month in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I'm assuming it's just for that zip code, though. I don't think that the entire city of Atlanta is going to get that little money. If he's giving away $1,000 a month, there's not 174 people in Atlanta. But that just goes to show you, Joe Biden, come on, man. And finally, I've been talking way too much about politics, and especially about the election. I think the last 3 weeks, 70 to 80% of this podcast has been about the election. So I went out of my way to find a really funny news story to share with you guys, and I think I might have found it. Man accidentally eats whole bar of chocolate. Now, what's so funny about this? Well, it happens to be a chocolate bar from Ex-Lax. Basically, a chocolate bar filled with laxatives. The man had supposedly bought the chocolate Ex-Lax bar, very well aware that it was filled with laxatives, and in the directions it said, eat 1 or 2 blocks of chocolate a day. He assumed the entire block of 12 blocks of chocolate. So he ended up eating 12 doses of Ex-Lax without realizing it. His wife, to her amusement, had said, So last night, my husband took some Ex-Lax. Then in this morning, some shit started going down. Like literally. He said the level of diarrhea that hit him was so violent, he immediately knew something was wrong. He looked at the packaging and realized that when it said eat 1 or 2 squares, it meant the tiny squares, not an entire block. Well, thankfully, he had only eaten 1 block, otherwise I would feel really bad for him if he actually ate 2 of those whole blocks of chocolate and had 24 doses of laxatives. So, she did the only thing she could think of and called poison control to ask for advice on how to help her partner, but she had a bit of trouble getting through the call. This according to the Mirror, mirror.co.uk. I literally cannot stop laughing, she recalls. The guy on the other end probably thought it was a prank call. I swear to God, I hope they record their calls and enjoy that one at the staff meeting later, because even thinking about me trying to explain that my 39-year-old husband just ate a whole brick of Ex-Lax is making me wheeze. She continued, the guy was like, the biggest risks are cramping, dehydration, and diaper rash. Oh boy, diaper rash. I can imagine what that could end up with. And I know a lot of guys follow by the rules of Tim Allen from Home Improvement. That's an old show way back in the 90s. Real men don't need instructions. Well, take my advice on this, especially when it comes to medical things like laxatives and drugs. Please, please, please read the instructions before taking it. Now, before we go, I do want to mention that we do have a Discord now, so you can go check out my Twitter at Cynical Centrist, and every day I'll be posting a tweet that will take you to my Discord. So go check it out and come chat with me and the others. We have about 13 to 15 people currently in the Discord, obviously because I haven't really been advertising it very much, so I expect that to grow over time. If we hit... Oh, by the way, I wanted to thank everybody for 500 followers on Twitter. If we get to 1,000 followers on Twitter or 500 total downloads on Podbean, I plan to set up a general election scenario special between John Delaney on the Democrat side, yes, I know I've been making fun of him, and get ready for this, Boris Johnson, UK's Prime Minister, which, fun fact, he was actually born in Manhattan, New York. So yes, he could actually run for President of the United States. This could be a realistic, well, pseudo-realistic scenario. So that'll be pretty interesting. That is if we hit 1,000 followers on Twitter or 500 listeners on Podbean, whichever one comes first. All right, so that is it, everyone. And be sure to check me out on Twitter. Follow me at Cynical Centrist. Come at me, bro. And also on our Discord channel. And I will see you next week. And remember, if I'm not pissing you off, I'm not doing my job. Bye, everybody.